How can we foster creativity for our kids, your own kids, or even yourself? Well, first, what is creativity so we all agree on it? I like Sir Ken Robinson's definition that creativity is a process of having original ideas that have value. Notice he has an emphasis on process, that it's not just a bolt of lightning out of the blue, that it's something that you prepare for. Original ideas, of course, but that they have value. They're not just ideas that won't ever work and can't be used. He also says that imagination is the source of all human achievement. Well, creativity, imagination. He actually picks three words that he says some people use interchangeably: imagination, creativity, and innovation. But he says that really, in his view, there's a sequence, and having each one given a slightly different meaning can give you a better picture of what creativity is, what goes into it. Imagination is your mind's ability to bring things into itself without the senses. In other words, it comes right from the mind into your consciousness. Creativity is putting that imagination to work, kind of applied imagination. And you can do that, or you can share that with a group and they can do it. Innovation is putting that creativity into sort of real practice, maybe scaling it up. So often a company or a school district may do that. Well, Albert Einstein says that imagination is more important than knowledge. Imagine that. His rationale is that knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the whole world. You can actually imagine the whole universe. So imagination comes first, and that's what we'll focus on. 2,500 years ago, King Ashurbanipal, he was the first ruler who could read and write, had these gigantic sculptures guarding his palace near present-day Mosul, Iraq, 9 feet high. The sculptor who created those never saw a living creature like that. Somebody had to imagine something with the body of a lion, the wings of a bird, and the head of a man. So that's imagination, but then the sculptor who created those sculptures had to use his disciplined skill to do such a fine job. Let's think more about that freedom of imagination and the discipline of skill that's needed to bring a creation to life. Imagination is that freedom to associate items in your mind that normally don't go together. That's divergent thinking. The disciplined part comes when you try to apply imagination. When this little girl tries to apply her idea of building a tower out of blocks, but her imagined block that is just sitting in mid-air, unsupported by anything, doesn't work. She has to apply her discipline, knowing that, the block has to sit on other blocks or it will fall down. That's the focused or convergent part. In school, we teach kids about the problem-solving steps. So a problem's identified, you create ideas, you brainstorm them, you select the best idea, you test that idea, evaluate it, and so on. Part of this process is imaginative, and part of it is more disciplined, right? The part in yellow, problems don't just jump out of the world and say, here I am, solve me. There's something that you have to kind of notice and say, I bet I could do that better, or is that working the way it should? So identifying the problem is highly imaginative, and then you brainstorm ideas from your imagination. Then the disciplined part of creativity comes in, where you select an idea and you figure out how to build it and test it. The scientific method is very similar to this. Now, we're often taught that begins with a hypothesis, and then you create an experiment to test that hypothesis, and based on the outcome, you accept or reject that hypothesis. Well, you're missing the beginning of science there, because every experiment begins with the imagination. A scientist imagines through observing and thinking, I wonder why that happens. The inventor of the microwave noticed that his chocolate candy bar on his lab table was melting. And he thought, that's odd. And then he tried to imagine, well, can something in my experiment be doing that? And then the discipline part came in where he discovered, oh, it's the microwaves that are doing that. So in the scientific method, there's an observation part, a questioning part that is highly imaginative, again, in yellow. And then the hypothesis, experiment, analysis is more disciplined. But scientific method is fundamentally a creative process. So to reinforce this idea, I bring Albert Einstein back, but this time it's not just that knowledge is limited and imagination is so broad, it's that imagination is the beginning of scientific knowledge. It all starts with imagination. Where in the world, where in your brain would you find imagination? Well, imagination is related to your capability for attention. When you're alert, working on a problem, your attention is tightly focused. There's almost a sensor there to keep ideas away from your conscious mind that would be distracting or that are irrelevant. Well, that sensor prevents imaginative ideas. Your imagination thrives in this sort of environment where you are unfocused, you're not alert, you're dreamy, you're sleepy, you're tired, you're impaired in some way. Your imagination thrives because that sensor that normally blocks those unrelated ideas is relaxed and they can flood into your conscious mind. It may happen during a relaxed, warm shower. New ideas come to your mind, unbidden. Where do they come from? It's because your brain is relaxed. This happens especially as you fall asleep at night or wake up in the morning. Even during dreams, that's what dreams are. If you wake up in a dream, you can sense that. You can actually use these ideas to guide your imagination. I've been doing that since age 27. If I'm working on a project, before I go to sleep, I think about the project and what the problem is that I'm trying to solve. I think about it a little bit, and that seeds my imagination, seeds my brain, my unconscious brain, with the issues that I'm working on. And then while I'm asleep, it keeps working on those. And then the next day or in a few days, ideas come bubbling up into consciousness. Some people keep a notebook beside their bed so they can record ideas from their imagination as they're falling asleep, waking up, or if they wake up in the middle of the night in the middle of a dream. So value your hunches and insights because that's where the brain power of your unconscious mind, that's the way it communicates to your conscious mind. So you can take time to daydream, value that. Take time to imagine, even to be a bit bored. That's when the imaginative thoughts appear. Now, they don't come from nowhere. They have to come from a knowledge base. How do you build that knowledge base? That's a task not only in school and at home, but of a lifetime. So one way is to read voraciously. If you're an artist, visit galleries and look at other artists' work. Talk to people who are different from you. Travel. Nikola Tesla finds that the secret of invention for him is to be alone. He says that's where ideas are born for him. Every night, in his mind, he starts a journey to some place in the world. He imagines what it's like there, and ideas just flow into his imagination from that. Walter Russell says, when you're alone, the universe talks to you in flashes of inspiration. Of course, it comes from your mind. Steve Jobs says those flashes come from prior experiences. You can't be creative if you have the same bag of experiences that everybody else has. You need to seek out new experiences to feed your imagination. This image is a reconstruction of one of Thomas Edison's workshops. And you can see here that it takes more than just a bright idea to make a functioning light bulb. In one of his famous sayings, genius, invention, is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, hard work. The imagination has to come first, and then you can start working on making it work. So to reflect, creativity is a mix of free-flowing imagination and more disciplined kinds of creativity. Imagination is the divergent, unconventional thought. You can foster that by seeking out unfocused or relaxed states for yourself. You can feed that imagination by reading and building a knowledge resource. So if you do this to foster your imagination, you'll get a fountain of ideas flowing into your conscious mind. I hope you give it a try.